Scott, there has been discussion, but I've only been on the edge of legal discussion about the word assigned. That the statute, as I understand it, says that if we provide transportation, we shall provide transportation to the students assigned school. And we apparently have always interpreted that as the homeschool or whatever you call it in the past. But the truth is that when someone goes to a magnet and gets in a magnet, that becomes, by the Board of Education, their assigned school. And why then wouldn't they have the same transportation rights as any other student, which would not be shuttle stops?
The first phone call I got was just that. A parent who's a trauma nurse, how she could not get her son to the shuttle stop. And I heard, I got a real education on it. This is not the students' conduct, the parents.
Well, we would typically, yeah.
It is, I mean, it is, this is something that's
That's
really
true.
big, it's blowing up as I speak.
You're absolutely on the mark in terms of that.
An issue right now that I'm trying to deal with, and, so, what did I read about?
Parent conduct, code of conduct. Yeah, it's not in there.
And one of the things that really annoys her are the kids that are very late, and no fault of their own, and yet they slide into the policy that, you know, penalizes them.
Yeah.
And it's habitual. I mean, it's not that it's happening periodically. It's the same kids, same parents, same.
And we hear that argument. I've heard from parents who said, look, don't punish my child, it's me. You know, it's my problem. And, you know, the response to that would be, well, I understand, but you're the legal responsible adult for the student. The student has no other choice than to, you know, be reliant on your care.
Maybe we need to define responsible adult.
So,
My ears are ringing, because I was one of those parents that they would try to drag me out the bed. Get in the car, we will drive,
Yeah.
just come on.
So the guiding principles are really our critical point, and those were written by the Board of Education. Those are not written by policy administrator or by Scott or anybody else. I was vice chair and Eric was chair, and we wrote those guiding principles together.
Is there anything that's missing from your standpoint that you had to think about it, do it again, that you think,
Well, there are two specific things. One, the homeschools need something to beef it up so that we make sure that they are a priority, because they don't always seem to be a priority. Now, I think we've been moving in that direction to some extent. But because, and that was part of why we looked all this past year at capacity issues with Scott's previous life. Because we've chosen not to control homeschool capacity. We've chosen to just anybody who lives in the neighborhood can go there. And so if we continue doing that and we don't have some way of getting more teachers into that school or more classrooms at that school or more something, we're going to continue having it incredibly difficult. That and the fact that while we did do this decision matrix, it may have been helpful for the board to have given more thought to exactly how that would be weighted.
But I actually had a new thing that I wanted to throw out there, if this is the time to do it. So probably, I guess maybe 2 months ago, I had requested some data, shocking, about suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, and I requested it for pre-K, first grade, pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. And I was just curious to know the numbers of kids in those lower grades, particularly pre-K to second grade, that were being suspended. And you all received it. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. But where we are is for pre-K suspensions, 2014-15, and 18 pre-Ks at the time of this report, which was back in March. For kindergartners, we had 222. For first graders, we had 297. And for second graders, we had 526. So for a total of just over 1,000 kids in those grades who had had out-of-school suspensions. And I started thinking about this just because I'm thinking of pre-K, a kindergartner, and a first grader. As adults, there should be some things we can do to intervene in behavior or whatever's happening that's causing them to be suspended and mitigate that. And so I was talking to some folks in other districts, and several have talked about putting forth, not necessarily a policy, but a resolution to not do suspensions for whether it's pre-K through first grade or pre-K through second grade. And I guess it really speaks to some of the discussion that happened at the meeting on Tuesday around restorative justice and things like that. But as adults, if we can't do positive behavioral reinforcement with pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, it just seems like we're doing something wrong. Why are we suspending kids at that age?
So if you're gonna do this, then this is going to happen. And what happens has to be mildly uncomfortable. They'll want to go there. And sending a kid home from school
It's not mildly uncomfortable.
I mean, that may be an advantage,
Paul,
so you're
but-
rewarding some of these
But
kids.
Paul, used to be that third grade was about the time the suspensions kicked in. But what I hear from schools and is that these children come to kindergarten as worldly wise and tough around the edges as they can be, and they need parent support. And getting it, it's like pulling hens teeth. And so, many times, the only way that you can get some of these parents to school is to send the child home.
The home situation needs that to be acceptable. How do you change it? How do you get to the point where that child sees something? Because you're not gonna change the whole image. So the child comes to school, and it's almost to me like you tell them one thing, this is the way you're supposed to behave, yet goes back to an environment where misbehaving is, what we deem to be misbehaving is okay. And they go back and forth, and you get the mixed message. How do you do it?
Children are pragmatic. They really are. Once they figure out it ain't working here, they will adjust. They just,
Well, that's what I'm talking about, the uncomfortable,
yeah,
you know.
you gotta make it uncomfortable, but sending them home is not the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's gotta be, it's something that I wanted that I'm not gonna get because I did this.
Career, all of those things, even the whole continuum of the school to prison pipeline. The fact that we're suspending kids in pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade hastens all of what the data is saying. And what's our role in it as a district in terms of what can we do to be more proactive? And I don't have all the answers, how do you change the behavior? But the fact that we suspended 18 pre-K students through March of this year is like, wow, to me. And that's up from 6 the previous year. You know, kindergartners, 222. Those are a lot of kids. I don't know if these are 1-day suspensions, 5-day suspensions. Hopefully they're not 10-day suspensions, my God. But to me, that's something that we should be paying attention to.
There's a little story, and I'll tell it quickly. My latter years as a school administrator, I had a little boy just as cute as he could be, a little red-headed kid. And he was mischievous. The first thing in the morning, they wanted to bring him into school and sit him down, and so he came to me a couple of times and said, the next time I'm going to have you run the track. Because I sense he just, he could. Energy. So, of course, we had a little plan, behavior plan, the whole 9 yards. It went well for 2 days. He just couldn't stand it the third day. So here comes the teacher bringing it to me. So I said, you remember? He went out and ran that track, and I'm standing there. You want me to run it again?
He's having fun.
He just needed to get that energy expended. But the whole story, all of it boils down to these schools being bombarded with too many high-need students to that at some point, they have to say the worst of the worst kids, and I'm not getting any kind of support, what do I do? So I have some empathy for the schools, I really do.